Welcome to the On-Premise IT Roundtable podcast, the only show that dares to be both on topic or on premise and on location, on premises. Now that's been a little hard during the pandemic, but here we are in Silicon Valley with another on-premises, on-premise episode. This week's premise relates to storage security. We're here at Storage Field Day, and one of the things that occurred to the delegates was, frankly, that storage isn't all that secure. In fact, it's really, really insecure. But before we get into that too much, let's meet who's on the panel today.
Hi, my name is Jeffrey Powers. I am founder and chief janitor at geekazine.com, and I am a co-founder of Build Day Live.
I'm Enrico Signoretti. I work for Geekom as a data storage analyst, and you can find me on Twitter as Signoretti.
I'm Andrea Mauro. I'm an IT architect and blogger, part-time blogger. You can find me at vinfrastructure.it.
So for years, we've, in People in Storage, have known that storage is the biggest or the weakest link in security. It seems like security is very tightly coupled to networking. It's also somewhat tightly coupled to applications and operating systems and so on, but it seems like storage is the last thing people think about when it comes to security. And yet, as a wise man said, the hackers aren't trying to get into your network, they're trying to get into your data. That's where all the value is. What do you guys think of this? Enrico, I'm going to start with you, since like me, we've been in this industry a long time. How secure is storage these days?
Well, actually, storage is not secure. I mean, in general terms, I think that people, users and administrators think about, as you said, the security and network go along together, but they don't think enough about security. I raised this problem a million times lately about the fact that we are taking each single problem as a single security problem. Like now, ransomware. Everybody talks about ransomware. They don't think about ransomware as as part of a larger problem. I mean, these attacks are very long. People don't think about the fact that you can you have been attacked 200 days before the ransomware shows up. So what did they do in these days? Maybe they copied your data. Maybe they had other things. So I always talk about building a data security strategy now, and that has to be part of a larger data management strategy now. But it doesn't happen, and we saw it multiple times also during this Storage Field Day. But in general, I mean, this is a huge problem in the industry.
The network is and security are very correlated, but somehow is because they are also a data path where data can flow, or a path where attack can come when we talk about remote attack. But hardening the data infrastructure is very important, but also very difficult, because for the storage, data is the main service that should be somehow provided. And you can try to provide in clear, or maybe in encrypted way, or in somehow where the application, like database where single row or single table are encrypted, and try to secure some pieces of the information. But still, there are some layers where the information are in a clear way. For example, the most stupid way from the security point of view is just use a SED for encrypt the data at the disk level. Okay, for the hardware attack, if I had a physical attack and somebody stole the disk, it can be effective. But from other layer, I have the data in clear. So is always try to find the path of the data, and for each level try to put some kind of prevention that is not so easy, or remediation, like all the a data protection solution that already exists, but they came later. You already had the attack and still some damage or effect from this attack.
And then, of course, the biggest thing is that data, the one thing about storage is that anything from a ransomware or hack or anything like that can lie in wait. And with storage, you know, you could take a disk out, you could set it to the side, and then you think, oh, I can actually use that in this array. I can bring this over here. You could have old LTO tapes that you need to pull a backup off of. You take all the hard drives and then you'll give them to employees or sell them to employees because you're not going to use them anymore. And then that data, not only do things like anything like a ransomware attack or anything like that could go with the employee, but if you don't clean the drives or do what you need to do, that your data could actually escape out of your campus and go into somebody's computer while they're playing farm whatever, and that can be just as dangerous as somebody trying to get in.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I used to work in a very secure financial industry, and we had massive data protection and security controls. We used encryption. We had very good authentication and access controls. And every day we would back up all the data in plain text on tapes and leave them in a box on the front desk for somebody we didn't know to come and take them away. And it's like, what? You know, but you know, that's maybe not how it's done these days, but maybe it is how it's done these days.
Yeah, because if you think at backup in the cloud, mostly are just considered, okay, the cloud is, the data are encrypted, the channel is secured, is HTTPS, but you send data that maybe are not encrypted. So every time you have to think where the data flows and how you can protect them.
I think in general there is this perception, or better, I mean, we don't have full visibility on our data. So when I talk with my clients, it happens most of the time that they have, you know, different type of systems distributed now. Some of them are in the cloud, some are on premises. They don't have full visibility. They don't have even an idea of how many copies of the same files they have distributed in their organization, outside the organization, and so on. So the first thing is that you have to think about this visibility, because without it, you can't do anything. And when you have the visibility, then you can start to plan, you know, against it. So now that I see where the data is, what I have, what it is, and what can I do with it? I mean, so starting analysis, analyzing how the data is accessed, and all these kind of things. It's not easy. I mean, as we saw this week, thinking about, for example, the guys at Roundtable, okay? So they designed a very sophisticated system, but actually it's just for the system, so it's not global. I mean, I like what they do, and of course, if you have, you know, a subset of your information that, you know, has to run in a very secure way, that's good. But actually, even if their solution is very good and provides visibility, provides, you know, access pattern analysis and a few other things, I mean, we don't have a solution today that covers everything. I mean, and this is the first problem. The other problem is, you know, most of this analysis that you do today, like, we are analyzing that, you know, people are accessing the data, so they are doing it in the wrong way, or they are encrypting the files, then we react, okay? But this same analysis could be applied to many other things, okay? So not just ransomware. So I love when vendors say, we have, you know, ransomware protection, we use machine learning to understand what you do. Okay, so you can use the same machine learning to learn much more of your data than you do today. And then there is the reaction part. I mean, what you do when you learn about something, okay? And that's, you know, another problem with a set of solutions, of course. So there are several ways to tackle this. There are several also solutions in the market. Unfortunately, most of them are not integrated. So there are layers upon layers of complexity that we have to manage. But actually, it's possible.
Yeah, and the biggest problem, of course, is data is something that's held by the user, the person that is not a security expert and just wants to get their work done. And I see so many different ways that information. I hate bring your own device to work, because that is a great way for data to leak out into from a secure environment to a non-secure area. And I'd fear to see what we do things, like for instance, I look at video and I look at deepfakes, being able to put Tom Cruise's face on my head. Can we do that with data as well? Can we make data deepfakes? And what other security issues do we have to start thinking of for the future that we haven't? Yeah.
I think that if we look at the problem that many countries have now, I mean, many organizations in different countries think about GDPR, think about other regulations that are now very common in Europe as well in the US. So protecting better access to data, especially personal information. So the same problem applies. I mean, if I go to a vendor and I ask, look, I want to know what you know about me, it's very difficult today. And so we need to implement this tool just to know what is happening, what we know about the user, but actually the same mechanisms are necessary to understand your data. So you can make, instead of a simple query about a single person, you can make a much more sophisticated query. So just to learn, for example, how many non-encrypted social security number are we storing in our system? That should be 0, right? Theoretically. And if you start coming up with documents that are readable, that contain this data, you should be worried, because this is an information that should be not available to anybody, probably. So, or you have to check if you have the right access to it. So this is, a very complex problem. We are starting now to understand, and ransomware. So the positive, the positive side, if there is any, of ransomware is that it's starting to, to build a culture in the companies, so they are more aware that there are these security risks. Because yes, in the past we had, huge data breach, huge, attacks in large organization, and we say, if somebody attacks, a multi-billion company, I'm not nobody will come to me. But actually, ransomware demonstrated that even if you are if you are a small business, less budget, you are more attackable than a major corporation. So everybody starts to think about this thing, and they are starting asking for solutions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even for what it's worth, even little Gestalt IT, we had a spear phishing attack against us the other day. It was pretty poorly handled, and the staff recognized it and didn't fall for it. But the idea that somebody would attack a tiny company like us is pretty scary, isn't it?
In some cases, it's just practice. I remember my first attack. It was many years ago, and the kid lived in Canada, and then I didn't know what to do, so I did the wrong thing, and then I locked myself out of what I needed to do, and I had to start from scratch. Luckily, I didn't build enough of a business to worry about it too much, but I learned that some of these people, they're just doing script kiddie type stuff. They're learning because they don't know what else to do, so they figure, okay, this might be a career for me. So if I hurt a few people along the way, so what? At least I'm learning and I'm building from there.
All data can be somehow critical or interesting for attackers, because also one single outside the company can maybe have a copy of his ID or something that can really useful in the dark web, where identities or other type of data, or only the address that you have in every email client are also interesting. So everybody can be somehow attacked for the data. There are other reasons why everybody can be attacked, but we are talking about data. And found where are your data, how the data are protected, how many copies. This is one step, but there are some limitations, for example, in the permission that you can grant of the data, because the permissions are not useful for protect data. If you permit somebody to read the data, it can also copy, and is not so good in the way of you want to protect data. For some application, you can already make those kind of locking or define the permission of copy, print, modify, and track every change. But as Enrico said, is something vertical. There are a lot of solutions that are not integrated. And also, you have to consider the storage part, because still there is somehow is one or more storage, and we learn that attackers are also going to the storage level and try to.
There's always going to be a loophole somewhere.
Yeah.
And let's focus in on that. So rather than, I mean, I think that a lot of us see some of these issues, especially in IT, but this is storage field day. You guys are storage experts. I've heard a couple of things already in this conversation that I think might open some eyes of people who don't really know storage. So, for example, we heard about the idea of, this disk is encrypted. Well, somebody needs to access the data, so I can get in the operating system level and read the data anyway. We heard about
Fiber channel is totally unencrypted. There are some devices to encrypt the connection, but you have a lot of paths where the channel is not secured.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the same with a lot of these things. So, I mean, some of the other things we heard about was secondary storage and data protection that can help you with ransomware. But basically, if it has a copy of the data, then that also is an opportunity for somebody to exfiltrate that data. One of the things as well that we are concerned about in storage. So let's focus on what storage people are concerned about. So storage people are concerned about direct access to storage media. You're concerned about snooping on the channels, getting in from the operating system underneath the permissions layer.
The backup example is also interesting because for most of the backup solution, for example, you have backup from storage snapshot, and maybe you are trying to use storage snapshot to make something little close to immutability or fast recovery or something that nobody can modify, but from there, probably you can access the data and maybe delete the snapshot.
Yep.
And one thing that we really miss is the fact that many enterprises, many organizations don't really think about data security until it's too late. So nobody verifies, the security stance of his organization. I mean, so you have to start and ask questions and not just because the vendors now are really keen in selling you ransomware protection. That's because it's in the news. But actually, really, so is this enough? Do we even ransomware protection? Are you protecting all your data? Are you protecting the something that is critical? Is it? Sometimes I see very very stupid pitches from vendors, and they say, we do ransomware protection, which is now, a checkbox. So everybody does ransomware protection now, but nobody, for example, talks about, so they talk about protection and non-prevention, first of all, and very few, we had a couple of good examples also at the last Cloud Field Day, but very few talk about, look, let's talk about prevention. Let's check what you're doing with your data. Let's analyze what you have, how you use it, so that we can understand. Because yes, you mentioned ACLs. The possibility to access the data. Okay, because we want to access the data, of course. But is the right person that is accessing the data? Is the right group? And again, it's not. So it's part product solutions, but part is our processes, our way to think about data and how to reason around it. So this is the huge change in mentality that everybody, including storage administrator, have to do. That's the most important thing at the moment.
The most interesting thing is I kept thinking about as you were talking. It's like I get to pick up the phone. It's like, hello, and they say, hey, we'd like to find a way to extend your ransomware policy. Oh. But the biggest problem is then ultimately is we have to deal with how the user gets the data. and whether it be through the cloud, whether it be in some secure way and in an unsecure way, whether they're trying to copy files because they're going on a trip and they're not going to be near an internet access to be able to work on their files, or just simply opening up an email saying, hey, you know, extend your car warranty, and you click here, and boom, next thing you know, you've got an attack going on all of your data. Being able to create that snapshot, being able to head that off before anything gets completely infected in your area, create the snapshot, so when you do go under attack, you can bring it back before you lose the $1 million a day that your company makes, and of course would ultimately lose if they were to go down for the day.
And let me just point out here too that the big elephant in the room that we storage people know that a lot of normal people don't know is administrative access and administrative, so as Enrico was saying, ACLs. Well, who controls the ACLs and who can change the ACLs? I mean, if you've got root on the server, you can give yourself access. Mm-hmm. What you were just saying, snapshots and data protection and so on. Again, this comes up a lot in storage discussions, but it doesn't come up a lot in security discussions. And that is that things like snapshots and replication and administrative access and even sort of remote administration of machines and remote access to upgrade machines and all this kind of stuff, all of that is a back channel to get into the data that people aren't aware of. So I really want to zoom in on that because that's something we were talking about earlier today. How the storage admin can be exploited, or the storage admin access can be exploited to basically do all the things you guys have been talking about this whole time. I mean, think about it. You can wipe data out with a snapshot restore. You can, all these things can happen through the administrative interface.
You have to start with,
On the same token, your snapshots can be just as dangerous as the storage itself. We're always taught, okay, our backup plan is to have a multi-tiered backup, that's a week, a day, a month, a year out. But then you create all these snapshots and you don't deal with the snapshots after the fact that you don't need them anymore. They sit there and then they can be attacked in their own way because either you forgot about them or your company says that we need to keep them for some God-known reason or anything like that. And then if somebody realizes, hey, we can attack this door instead of attacking the main door.
This is again on the security stance of your organization. So who controls the controllers? And in this case, it's the administrator, for example. So you have to put in place mechanisms and processes that think about data first. So and the administrator is one of the different types of person that can access data. So you have to think about it. You have to think about, sometimes we are talking also about, still today, we have access problems to our data that could be reconduced to, bad behaviors. How many times, people just follow the easy path. So they don't have two-factor authentication, for example, or things like that. And with all the social engineering that is happening now. So you are on Facebook and they ask you stupid questions, jokes.
Yep.
Your dog is
last thing you ate.
Yeah, last thing you ate, or your preferred food. They are collecting data about you. I mean, and then you use the same stuff as password. The same answer that you give to these guys as password without a second level of authentication. So back to the administrator part. I mean, are these administrators, using the right procedures to access their system? Are they doing, the right things? And is the rest of the organization applying the same rules? Mm-hmm. Because two-factor authentication is not as common as it should be.
No, I wonder actually how many storage devices even support two-factor for administrative access, let alone have any kind of use of it.
Yeah, but also factor authentication or some kind of strong authentication can be very useful. But also you need some way to have a great separation of privilege. Who can do, for example, a snapshot, who can do the encryption, and have the possibility to have user totally separated. In this way, you can provide a different level of protection. Some storage, for example, are implementing immutable snapshot just because the administrator is not able to do something. The idea that I'm root or admin and I can do everything, I'm God, is not the right approach, neither on data, neither on operating system, and this also must be considered if we want to have strong authentication, strong user, but user that can do what they should do, because also which kind of data, which kind of access as an administrator maybe should be limited on what they must done.
Role-based access control.
Yeah, everywhere.
But again, in many cases we have these controls. Like, so imagine, I think there are certainly systems that have two-factor authentication. Yep. There are systems that have role-based access control. There are systems that have strongly enforced access control to data. There are systems that have all these things. How many people are using those things versus turning them off? Because I suspect that a lot of systems have a lot of these systems, this stuff turned off.
I'm going to add one more to that, and that is fake second authentication. Giving you a secondary authentication, but then giving you a limited list. It's like having a password, but you can't use numbers, or you can't use special characters. And then you're given, there's one site that I love that gives you the two-factor authentication, which you've got to answer your security questions. But the security questions is a drop-down list of 10 options. So this person has 1 out of 10 to figure out what you're going to say on that, instead of you putting in something very unique. And I like to keep things as unique as possible, as long as possible.
Yeah.
One-time password.
Exactly.
And even then, though,
no, not one time, but
a lot of the time this stuff can be overridden by the vendor's administrative access. So there again, I mean, you think about it like that way. I mean, if you, social engineer Amazon to get into your AWS S3 account, and suddenly...
Or how many storage does have a super administrator user that you formally don't know as a user, as a customer, but when some issue appears, I went there, super user, and I can fix this.
You know, sometimes what I find, and I think that we are all lazy. If I was a system administrator, and I was trying all the time to simplify my life. And now that we have a lot of automation everywhere, because the infrastructure are big, so we try to automate, script everything. Mm-hmm. But actually, distributing and maintaining certificates is quite, complicated, especially if you don't have the budget to have the right solution. So you start removing some of these things to make everything easier. So to automate, to simplify your work, to do more, you remove, many of these controls, and then you are even more exposed. So we are actually doing the contrary of what we are talking here today. So, I mean, in general, again, I think we should work more. It's not the storage that it's not secure. Actually, storage is just a component of the infrastructure, and by its nature has to be accessible. Mm-hmm. We have to do a data security, and we should be, really concerned about our data, not the storage itself. And what we lose, what we don't have today, is a data security strategy, and that's it.
Sure. So actually, that was a really good summary, I think, Enrico, of your position. Do you guys want to give us a summary of your position?
It was perfect.
Yeah.
I think I'm good. You just have to watch for all the holes and try to fill all the holes, because there's always going to be somebody that's looking to specifically look for something. You're going to look for somebody that's just doing it in spite, maybe in hate or something like that. You did them wrong or something like that, or somebody's just treating it like an escape room, where they want to get that diamond out of the machine, and they find the way to do that because that's what they're learning how to do.
All right, so let's do a quick lightning round. I'm going to surprise you guys. I didn't warn them about this. Tell me one thing that is not in the public consciousness about storage security that would shock people listening to this. Okay, I'm going to give you a second to think about it, and while I'm going to say one. So in my opinion, I think the one thing that would shock people about storage security is the fact that most vendors have traditionally put in a backdoor super user account with a fixed password in most storage solutions that allows them to basically bypass everything you think you know about your system and get into all the data on that system. And this is one of those things that we don't talk about a lot, but it's totally true that a lot of storage systems have had that kind of access. Anybody else? What do you think? What's a shocking thing, Andrea?
No, I was saying the same thing before, that those super user account exist, and somehow you can get inside the processor and control the entire data path, and that's terrible potential.
Most of the vendors use the same protocol stacks, so that they come from the same sources, and if somebody has a bug, probably everybody has a bug. And sometimes nobody takes the time to patch these bugs.
And this is interesting because there are also the open source libraries or the common set of libraries. We know how somehow open source is not so secure when is not well managed or well controlled. And some libraries can be everywhere, and we know OpenSSL with two major bugs in the past. That was weird, but
yeah. And also, storage stuff tends to be pretty obscure, so you don't have as many eyes on the open source as you might think you do. So, Jeffrey?
Mine is that storage is everywhere. It could be in the server room. It could be on the computers on the people's desks. It can be in the copier. It can be in the fax machine that you put into the storage cabinet because you're not using it anymore. It could be in the phone systems. It could be anywhere. Anywhere that data can be stored in any way, shape, or form, that can be something that can be used to turn around and have somebody steal your data.
Can I add one more? Just because it popped in my mind, FTP. How many people still use, how many mission critical enterprise processes in large organizations still use FTP? Not even SFTP, FTP.
Yeah, but also for support from some vendor, they required to send through FTP.
That's
absolutely, and it's so true, and that's the thing. So listeners, thank you for joining us. Thank you for hearing our concern. We're trying to raise the flag here that storage really isn't as secure as you think it is. We are in the industry and we know it, and we would love it to be better, but for a variety of reasons it's not. So thank you guys for joining us. This has been a wonderful conversation. I know we could continue this forever. Where can we connect with you and continue the conversation?
Jeffrey Powers, Geekazine, Think Magazine, put in a geek. That's my Twitter handle.
Enrico Signoretti. You can find me by searching my name on Google. There are not many Enrico Signoretti working in storage.
Andrea _Mauro on Twitter and on LinkedIn. There are few, but you can find me.
And Instagram.
And the Instagram, but I don't use for professional, just for fun, like Facebook. But
well, there's a whole other security.
Yeah, I try to separate the user and the scope for this reason.
Exactly. And as for me, you can find me at Foskett on Twitter. I'm Stephen Foskett, publisher of Gestalt IT and organizer of the Tech Field Day events. Check out the Storage Field Day event that we recently held in hybrid, both in California and virtual. And also, you'll find a lot more of me talking about storage and other topics at gestaltit.com. So thank you for joining us for the On-Premise IT Roundtable podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe in your favorite application. Give us a rating and review wherever that happens to be, and maybe give us a shout out. This podcast is brought to you by gestaltit.com, your home for IT coverage from across the enterprise. For more episodes, go to gestaltit.com/podcast.